Welcome in, everybody, here today with a brand new quarterback rankings tier maker video. Today I will be ranking, yes, 67 quarterbacks into tiers. Not going to be going thoroughly into all of the QBs down the board, but you'll at least get to see where I've got them listed. Very excited for today's video. I feel like the second half of this season has given us so much to react to, a lot of change from my more recent quarterback rankings videos. So always learning new information, watching the film, and updating my stance on these QBs. So very much looking forward to this one. If you could, please do take a second to hit that like button down below. It is a free and easy thing that really does help support my channel. And then as we get started here, I like to begin this quarterback tier maker video by setting the board with what my QB tiers are. I have tweaked these different definitions over the years, but really the last couple of years I have landed in a spot that I'm really comfortable with kind of discussing where these QBs slot in, not just for a video like this, but being able to refer to these different specific tiers of quarterbacks in other analysis as well. So at the very first tier, self-explanatory, the elite tier, quarterbacks that as long as you give them just a decent team, they're going to put you in championship contention. Then tier 2 quarterbacks, these are certainly QBs that come with that ability to elevate the team. And above that, I like to define this tier of quarterbacks as a QB that in a 10-year window, you certainly expect that you will get a Super Bowl with this player, but maybe they haven't had the established playoff success or overall consistency to quite climb into that elite tier. Then my tier 3 of QBs, these are good starting quarterbacks, and the biggest qualifier for a QB in this tier is that if you're a tier 3 guy, I feel like if you put a great team around this player, he will give you a chance at a Super Bowl. He might be more of a win with type of QB than a win because of, like our top 2 tiers there. And then I will say that, like I said, a lot has kind of changed over the last 2 to 3 months. This is our biggest tier, tier 3, and I actually have kind of a divide, a top shelf and a bottom shelf of tier 3 QBs. It's where it gets a little bit more nuanced. I still think the overall definition of a tier 3 QB stands for all the guys we're going to talk about in that category, but I certainly have kind of a tier 3A and then a tier 3B, as you'll see in today's video. And then you have tier 4. This is just the fine QBs, guys that you look at and understand that they are one of the 32 best starting quarterback options in the league, but this is split into 2 different categories. You have kind of the capped veterans, and this is usually a smaller cluster of QBs. I would say this is like what a Derek Carr was for a long time, maybe what I would have said about Tua like last year, but a QB that is, like I said, a starting caliber quarterback, but definitely someone that you feel it's going to be very tough to win a Super Bowl with that player, and you're going to want to keep your eyes open for an escape route and a new QB. And then also in tier 4 are the true developing starters, guys that should be starting, but are younger, and you just don't know quite how good they're going to be in time. Then you have tier 5. This is your fringe starter category. Again, going to be split into the more capped veterans and more developing types of players. So on the veteran side of things, guys that you head into the year and you wouldn't be stunned if they were one of the bottom level starters in the league or maybe one of the best backups in the league. You wouldn't really be surprised either way. Spoiler alert, but the perfect example of someone like that would be like a Jacoby Brissett over the years. And then you do also have developing younger prospects in this category as well. But these are going to be guys that you can understand if you are trotting out them to start because they're not egregious or the upside is just so high that it's worth it. But you would also understand if maybe you wanted to have them take a backseat as the backup behind someone else for a year or two. But kind of that next cluster of prospects are in tier 5 there. Then you have tier 6. These are your true quality backups. And that, again, is split into some of the better backups in the league, but guys that you really wouldn't want to head into the year as their starter, unlike maybe a fringe starter. You could justify it a little bit more. And then, of course, true developmental backups where you can definitely understand what a team sees in the guy, but just very unproven and raw. And then I do actually have a tier 7 as well, which is kind of that next level of mid-ranging backups, which is actually where we will start things off as we work up to my number 1 ranked quarterback here. And like I said, I'm not going to dive into every individual player. You guys can take a look at the screen and see how I slot all these guys in. But in that tier 7 cluster of QBs, again, like I said, I'm not going to dive into each and every one of these guys down the board here. What I do want to say to keep in mind as we go here is, with these kind of split tiers like you see here, the actual ranking of where I would place them is going to mingle a little bit. Like, just for example, I don't necessarily think, say, Quinn Ewers, as you can see there, is a better overall QB than like Jarrett Stidham. There's some added room for interpretation there. At the end of the day, it's not that important whether you rank as my 43rd quarterback or 38th, but they are ranked within every given tier here. So just so you know how to read out all of the rankings here today, but just to shout out some more interesting conversations on some of these lower level QBs here. As you look at these standard backups there, 7B, these are going to be kind of mid-ranging backups, of course, but certainly guys that I do not anticipate become starters really at any given point in time. So a couple of names you might be curious why they land in there. Dillon Gabriel is a young quarterback for the Browns, obviously a rookie last year, got 7 starts or so, but he was so spot on to what you thought about him coming out of Oregon as just kind of this low upside game manager type. There's just not a lot of traits there. I think he will get better in time, but I don't think he's really going to be viewed as someone that should be starting for your organization and never really was. And then you will see I put Justin Fields in this category as well. I don't know if there's any Fieldies left that still believe at this point. I mean, my nickname for him is Justin Can't See the Fields. He just can't process defenses, and the game moves too fast for this guy. Unfortunately, obviously the tools are there. We've seen some flashes. I do still think as a backup quarterback, if you want to build a designed run game around him, I hope he can take care of the football and, you win games 20-17 or whatever it was, when he was in Pittsburgh, for example. That's fine. That's why he still makes this list as a capable NFL backup. But I certainly am done at this point projecting development or anything more than what he is. And then the other guy in this bottom category that stands out to me is Jarrett Stidham, who, yes, I think in all likelihood is a career backup, and I'm going to continue that way. But I am at least fascinated by what he's going to look like this weekend. Obviously, getting his first playing time as a Bronco. He's been here for 2 years. In the AFC Championship against the Patriots, there's like Nick Foles potential here. He was handpicked really by Sean Payton after the Russell Wilson experiment had run its course. Jarrett Stidham had just gotten 4 or 5 starts for the Raiders when they benched Derek Carr. And Sean Payton did kind of handpicked Jarrett Stidham as a bridge option for them, gave him a decent contract. And I do believe if the draft really didn't go their way and they weren't able to get Bo Nix, we would have probably seen a year of Jarrett Stidham as a starter or maybe competing with Zach Wilson. But I do think there's traits there. He was once upon a time drafted in the mid rounds out of the SEC to maybe develop into Tom Brady's heir apparent in New England. Highly recruited guy and has clearly shown some development throughout the years. So I'm very interested to see what he looks like here in the AFC Championship and if he maybe can make himself some money, and maybe when we eventually rank him again in the future, does he actually climb up into more of the bridge starter or beyond category? I left him here again because I think all likelihood he's going to stay as the career backup he's been. But of the guys in this group, he is at the top of the group and maybe closer to being more of an interesting prospect kind of guy, but that's also hard to do with a guy now, I believe, into his 30s that's been a journeyman backup quarterback, but I'm fascinated. Before we go any further with today's video, I want to thank the sponsor for today's show, my friends over at SeatGeek. SeatGeek is the #1 ticketing app on the market, and for good reason. Their user interface is easy to use, easy to understand. Green means good, red means bad. So when you're browsing for your seats, just look for the green dots. You know you will be getting the best bang for your buck, not just on the SeatGeek app, but market competitive prices as well. I'm always looking at other apps out there and will find myself back at SeatGeek. They are great about giving you images of exactly what those seats are going to look like. So if you've never been to the venue before, or you're sitting in a different section, you want to know what that view is going to look like, they've got you covered there. You'll get the tickets right there in your app, so you don't have to jump through frustrating email chains or download the tickets into your digital wallet or any of that frustrating stuff I've experienced with other apps as well. SeatGeek has been an amazing partner for me for a long time, and right now on SeatGeek, if you use code TFG10, you will save up to $20 on your next purchase and support my channel as well. So whether you're heading to a sporting event or a concert, SeatGeek has got you covered. Again, it is code TFG10 at checkout. Thank you to SeatGeek. And let's get back to the video. In Tier 7A, also in this category, again, lumped in with all these guys we've been talking about, you have the lottery ticket backups. Definitely guys that either haven't played as much or have played and really struggled, a variety of different high draft picks, low draft picks, you name it. But the way I would say this is if I'm at the casino playing roulette and I had to place bets on any of these guys becoming starters, you can see these guys left to right, the order that I would place those bets in. Not feeling confident in any of them, but these are all guys that, you know, maybe you're the Rams, for example, and you want to put a guy behind Matthew Stafford to maybe develop. I think like Malik Willis, for example, would have found himself in this category once upon a time, and he has developed and gonna get a big contract this offseason. We'll talk about him in a little bit. You're hoping for that outcome with the guys in this category. So without spending too much time on the guys here, at the bottom of your lottery tickets, Joe Milton, super strong arm, but a long way to go still from what we saw from him at Michigan and Tennessee. Kyle McCord, I wanted to include him. He just got picked up by the Packers on their practice squad. He was someone that I had a mid-round draft grade on coming out of Syracuse. His development has been fascinating, and there was never really room in Philadelphia with Tanner McKee and Jalen Hurts above him. So I'm fascinated in the QB factory that Green Bay has been. Can he win the QB2 job? And like we said, go the same path as Malik Willis. Riley Leonard, I did not have a draftable grade on him, but he did impress me in some flashes in Indy. He deserves at least a shout out here. Quinn Ewers, I did have a draftable grade on, but barely. Was, a 6th or 7th round grade for me. Not a big believer in Quinn Ewers. I don't like the pocket presence and just a lot of questionable mistakes, but he did actually beat out or got the nod over the next guy here, Zach Wilson, down there in Miami. I think it was more of them just going with the rookie. But I'll give him some credit. It could have looked a lot worse with him playing down there in Miami, and just maybe we see Quinn Ewers with a chance to start in his own kind of Spencer Rattler scenario there in Miami as they retool down there. But then I do have Zach Wilson. I just am fascinated by a guy that has the traits, and we've seen Geno Smith, Sam Darnold, the post-Jet failure resurgence of a lot of these QBs. I still would like to see Zach Wilson at least get another start or two somewhere just to see what it looks like. But again, not super confident in that. Will Levis, unbelievable arm talent. I see a lot of similarities to Justin Fields there, though, where like the game just so clearly moves too fast for him. The processing and the lack of pocket presence is just a major issue for him. And then Will Howard. Ironically, I think my pro comp on Will Howard was weaker armed Will Levis, but big armed national champion, day 3 draft pick for the Steelers. Again, kind of in this group where maybe he gets a chance next year, just depending on how things shake out with the Steelers quarterback room. Worth noting on Will Howard that he got a lot better in that final year after he had just transferred to Ohio State for that final year and did look like a legitimate NFL quarterback prospect in those playoffs, but you watched his tape during the regular season, and I don't know if he was draftable. So a fascinating kind of trajectory, if you will. Then I do have Shedeur Sanders here. It looked a little promising at first when he first stepped in, but it really fell off as the year went on, taking too many sacks, trying to create too much, some of the accuracy issues, the mistakes. There's a lot to work on with Shedeur still, and it's not like he has a ton of traits either. The arm is fine. The athleticism is fine. I'm kind of past discussing the pre-draft narrative on Shedeur Sanders, and at this point, I just kind of lump him in with this group of guys that may or may not get an opportunity moving forward, and we'll just have to see how they develop. And then Spencer Rattler, you have to at least acknowledge the development he's made since his Oklahoma days. There's been year-to-year growth. I do think the Saints asked Spencer Rattler to play very conservative, almost out of his comfort zone in that sense, and limited his ability to kind of push the ball downfield and show some stuff. So he ends up losing that job to Tyler Shuck, of course, and maybe someone looks at him as a bridge option at some point to see where that development track goes, because he does have the traits and was a highly recruited guy coming out. But let's keep moving into Tier 6. And here again, you're going to have a cluster of some fascinating prospects that you just would be curious to see where it might go someday. But I do think this cluster of 3 players here, Jalen Milroe, Trey Lance, and Tanner McKee, are a cut above all of those prospects we just detailed here and belong in this Tier 6. I do think these 3 guys at some point really should get an opportunity to get some starts and see what happens. Jalen Milroe was a 3rd-round pick. I don't know that it's going to be in Seattle that he gets that opportunity, but he does have good arm strength and was one of the most incredible scrambling quarterback prospects I've ever watched coming out of Alabama. He needs to make the right strides by improving his accuracy and ability to read out defenses and run an NFL offense and all of that stuff. But it does feel like it would be a waste if he doesn't at least get an opportunity somewhere to see what he can do someday. Trey Lance, I do think, has taken the right steps to get better in different stops, whether it was in Dallas with the Chargers. Still fascinated if he were to get an opportunity. He was so young, so inexperienced too, when he was drafted in the top 3 by the Niners, and then eventually lost his job to Brock Purdy, of course. And then Tanner McKee, I think one of the more underrated kind of sleeper cell dart throws that a team could make on a quarterback, and it could even be in Philadelphia, depending just how far this goes with Jalen Hurts struggling more as of late. But especially for other teams, I mean, Tanner McKee was young coming out. He stands tall in the pocket. He reads defenses. He's got a great arm and is underrated at kind of getting out of the pocket and making some throws at times too. I do think developing there in Philadelphia, we could see a team maybe take a look at Tanner McKee even this offseason and throw a draft pick the Eagles' way, especially in a quarterback class that just doesn't really have a lot of options. I would be fascinated in Tanner McKee. And then you do have the list of quality backups, and I don't want to spend too much time on these guys. There's not a whole lot of fascination here, but these are definitely quarterbacks that if you have to start them for a game or even a month, they can keep a game alive and keep your season afloat. A couple of interesting names in here. Russell Wilson in the middle of this group. I do think he's fallen to this level at this point, even below Jameis Winston here, who the Giants did actually go to when they could have gone back to Russ, when Jackson Dart was going through all the concussion protocols. Russ, I think, has really struggled to evolve his game. He always was able to be one of the elite play extenders, honestly, in like the history of the NFL, the moon balls, the escapability, but he just has really struggled to add more to his game as he's lost that escapability and mobility, and he's really been left with a pretty shaky product. Like, he can still make really accurate throws down the field, and we've even seen some big games from him, but that's kind of the state of a quality backup, is you're good at a couple of things and you can play well in an individual game, but you also are maybe more one-dimensional or streaky and are going to have some bad games in there as well. And I really think that's where we're at with Russell Wilson, and I wonder if he's kind of like a late-stage Cam Newton maybe, where he just doesn't really have a lot of interest in going around as a backup in the league. And I wonder if this actually might be the end of what we've seen from Russell Wilson. Joe Flacco in this group, man, Flacco was really interesting to me for the first month when Cincinnati acquired him, because I think he came in and played the best football I genuinely think we've ever seen, at least regular season, from Joe Flacco. Obviously, he had that incredible Super Bowl run, but it did fall away, and the turnovers picked up, and ironically, he got worse the more time he spent in Cincinnati, which is certainly fascinating. But if he wants to keep playing, I think he still probably could. I don't. If the arm didn't fall off at 41 or whatever, I don't think it's necessarily going to fall off at 42. Tua. I have Tua in this category, man. He was just so unbelievably bad this year. I'm sorry. And it's been good. Dolphins fans have finally gotten to this point with Tua where they're ready to admit that they were always ridiculous in some of the things that they said about who Tua was as a quarterback. But I also think he's playing worse now than he ever has. I mean, for the underdog players and the daily pick'em, lineups and stuff, Tua's interceptions higher than a half became a lock every single week for the most part. This dude is just Tua turned the ball over, a complete turnover machine. The accuracy this year was worse than it's ever been. You add the kind of concussion history on top of all this, and it just gets really ugly with the contract that they did give them. The Dolphins have, I think in terms of, different reasons, obviously, but in terms of a nightmare QB situation that they're going to have to figure out, this reminds me of the Browns with Deshaun Watson, who I actually kind of forgot to put on this list, to be honest. He would maybe go down in the lottery tickets category if I were able to revise this on the fly here, but, they're going to have to find a way to get out of that Tua contract. And I also wonder with Tua, again, for a different reason, I wonder if this is the last we've seen from him, because with that concussion record, when everybody was telling him, dude, you should just hang it up, count your money, take it to the bank and go live your life, literally stay alive, because what's the point of coming back as a backup if you have that added, concussion record on top of there? So that'll be fascinating to track. Also, Davis Mills in this category. I actually thought about including Davis Mills as kind of a prospect of sorts. Was a mid-round pick. There's a lot of Tanner McKee similarities there. It's just we've seen Davis Mills play in Houston, and frankly this year in many ways outplayed CJ Stroud. The only thing here is Mills signed a contract extension with the Texans. And I mean, if I'm Davis Mills, I would fire my agent, man, because why would you sign that when you never know if you're going to get an opportunity to play? Because I think there are teams out there like the Dolphins that we just talked about, or maybe the Jets, that could look at Davis Mills, who's got the arm, who has underrated athleticism, who was young coming into the league and has developed. Maybe he actually could be more. He is a guy that doesn't have incredible tools, as much as I just praised him for having solid tools. I still think he's probably just a quality backup, kind of similar to the Jarrett Stidham conversation, where I wouldn't be stunned if there is a little bit more in there, just a little bit more of a challenging player to place. And then Jimmy Garoppolo at the top of that. We don't need to spend any time there, but he takes the cake for me for quality backups in tier 6. Okay, tier 5. And shout out to you NFL sickos for waiting even this long to get to kind of starting caliber quarterbacks or of sorts here, because we've already talked about, 34 QBs or something. None of these guys are really viewed as starters right now, so this is what we're all about. But now we are getting into the group of, more starting consideration. And like I said in the intro, this is split into two categories. You have your fringe starters that are kind of your capped veterans, and then you have kind of these very interesting prospects that if they were starting week 1, you really wouldn't be the least bit surprised. So let's start with the prospect side of things. And I do still have Anthony Richardson in this category. I think especially with Daniel Jones maybe not being ready to start this season, it kind of creates this perfect fit there where I'm not going to say we fully know what Daniel Jones is, but we largely know what Daniel Jones is, whereas Anthony Richardson, arguably the traitsiest quarterback to come out ever. I mean, I know that sounds dramatic to say that, but one of the strongest arms you'll ever see, a gigantic human for the quarterback position with incredible athletic traits. It's hard to build a QB in the lab with better physical tools than Anthony Richardson, but the development just has been rough to watch, and the ability to stay healthy has been even harder to take a look at. So I'm still very interested in Anthony Richardson, especially in a Colts infrastructure that is as good as it is. So I'm not quite ready to give up on Anthony Richardson. I always thought this made sense too, to start Daniel Jones, kind of let Richardson take a back seat and see what happens maybe in 2026. But obviously it's a complex situation, and Anthony Richardson, just maybe he is made of glass and we just really are never going to get anywhere close to where you want to be with him. But then I have JJ McCarthy. Was a tough year in Minnesota, right? And vastly below expectations for a situation that I think the very common analysis, certainly from myself, and I think everybody I heard was like, yeah, JJ was okay as a QB prospect for the most part. But how could a QB that's has some traits and is a moldable ball of clay like JJ, who you believe in the work ethic, how could he fail in Minnesota, right? Well, turns out Sam Darnold was doing a little bit more, I think, than we realized for that situation in Minnesota, and the offensive line wasn't what we hoped for, and even Kevin O'Connell, I think, has struggled a little bit to pivot with some of the play calling, and later in the year we saw it get better where O'Connell kind of opened things up, did more to help a young McCarthy who just everything was moving too fast. The accuracy has been a major issue for him, taking sacks, throwing interceptions. I mean, really everything you look for in a quarterback. JJ McCarthy struggled at it at some point this season, but there were some flashes in there as well. I think the velocity, he can throw a deep out route, some of the stuff he can do with his legs. Some of the competitive energy and comeback efforts is real with him. So I definitely don't think this is the last we see of JJ McCarthy, who's just 22 years old. I wouldn't be stunned if Minnesota kind of has him take a seat for a year. It kind of just depends how they want to play it. But I also wouldn't be stunned, again, if he's starting week 1, which is what this tier is really all about. You wouldn't be stunned if they're backups, or you wouldn't be stunned if they are starting. And for me, Malik Willis is the next guy here that actually I am ready to put Malik Willis above JJ McCarthy and Anthony Richardson. So the Vikings don't even have the 4th best quarterback in their own division, and I don't really know how you can argue with that at this point. You know, Malik Willis has checked every box you could possibly imagine after he was acquired from Tennessee. He got multiple starts last season when Jordan Love had that scary-looking knee injury. He won both of those starts, and those starts were much more like he ran a play-action-oriented offense. They leaned into his legs and did enough to win those games. But when we saw Malik Willis this year, effectively 2 starts where he comes in the first quarter against the Bears in Chicago, when Jordan Love gets knocked out with a concussion, and then he starts the next week against Baltimore. That start against Baltimore was the highest graded quarterback performance per PFF on this season. The efficiency, the accuracy, the ability to extend plays, but running a real NFL offense and running LaFleur's offense, that was kind of the final stage with Willis, where it's like, all right, he headed into this game as the starter. He got the practice with the ones, and it wasn't like those starts earlier in 2024, where it was much more like, you know, we're trying to scheme this thing around you. He just ran a drop back passing game and dominated in that game and made himself, between that and the Bears game, generational wealth, if nothing else. Like, someone I think is going to take a chance on Malik Willis. Steve Palazzolo tweeted out with Dante Moore returning to Oregon, who's QB2 in this draft? And for me, it's easy. It's Malik Willis, who is a free agent. There's no reason for Green Bay to bring him back. He is the next QB in this offseason to see what he can do, and I'm very fascinated. And I also can't say how impressed I have been just following his comments, you know, post-game locker room interviews and that kind of stuff. Just the way he carries himself, the way he views his time in Tennessee, and how he has looked back at his development as an NFL QB. This is a guy I would be willing to bet on. So he comes in there pushing a top 32 QB spot there. I think that would put him exactly at 32 in these rankings, depending on how you would filter through 5A and 5B. Like I said, these might mesh a little bit, but right on that fringe of a top 32 QB. And then Michael Penix. Very discouraged, frankly, by what we saw from Penix in this second season. And then, of course, to see the injury pop up is very concerning because that was a concern with him as a prospect. Really struggled to stay healthy until that final year at Washington. So health, just like an Anthony Richardson, is going to be a big question mark for Penix. But the arm is undeniable. There's been some really impressive games from Michael Penix. There just have been. I wish he used his legs more because he is really a special athlete when he does decide to run, but I just don't love his pocket presence and the way he manages pressure and decides when and how to use his legs. But there's still a lot to work with. Just, again, a lot of highs, a lot of lows. He's going to come in at the top of that 5B prospect tier. Then you got your fringe starters. Don't need to spend too much time on these guys, but I do have Geno Smith in this group. Tough guy to know what to do with. The Raiders were just a complete unmitigated disaster, and I'm willing to at least look back a little bit to what he was in Seattle, where he was, to me, at least a tier 4 quarterback. So dropping him into tier 5 here, I do think teams might consider seeing what he has to offer, whether it's a team like Pittsburgh or the Jets even, bring him full circle there, just to see if you can get Seattle Geno Smith back. I'm willing to throw out a lot of the tape from his time with the Raiders, but it also, like, he doesn't get a free pass either. Like, there was a lot of bad interceptions, a lot of overthrows, and he contributed to the disaster with the Raiders. I do think he will be released here. And then Kirk Cousins played well down the stretch, and you got to remember he was coming off that Achilles injury in his first year in Atlanta. By all accounts, Atlanta's going to release him, but I haven't heard an update since they went and got Kevin Stefanski, where there is a connection with these two going back to Minnesota. I kind of think, very similar to what I said about Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson, Kirk Cousins and Michael Penix could be meant for each other in the year 2026, where Kirk is an adequate fringe starting veteran in there who's, yes, severely limited, but can run the offense, keep your team afloat and competitive in a pretty bad NFC South, as we saw the three-way tie at 8-9 this year, in large part because of how Kirk Cousins played down the stretch. And then if and when Michael Penix can get healthy, give him a full runway to recover, maybe you do go to Penix just to kind of see what he has, and if you have to, consider a younger quarterback in 2027. Jacoby Brissett goes in this tier. I kind of said it in the intro. He's kind of the definition of a fringe starter. He threw 1 million passes for Arizona and did a good job for what they needed him to do to get through that disaster season in Arizona. I do like Jacoby maybe to like Minnesota this offseason as a good fit to kind of raise the floor with JJ there because it is such a good situation. And then Mac Jones absolutely belongs at least in this category, if not more. I mean, he played really well in San Francisco. He did. We know he's got his physical limitations, but right now I've got him as kind of a capped fringe starter, but there is a little bit of it with Mac Jones where he is a little bit younger than some of the guys in this category. And, I'm open to the idea that he can be more of maybe a tier 4 type of guy, something like I would have said about Derek Carr for a long time. The thing with Mac Jones goes back to the Davis Mills thing there. He signed a 2-year extension in San Francisco. If he was a pending free agent and an opportunity to maybe go be the starting quarterback for the Browns or the Dolphins or the Jets or something like that, I would be really interested to see how that would go. I do think the Niners are probably going to end up with him back as the backup, and he's going to be a little bit capped in that sense just for his actual situation. But that concludes tier 5. Now we get into tier 4, which is a smaller tier, but we're into the top 26 of starting quarterbacks, maybe 25 if this guy does retire, and that's Aaron Rodgers. Very up and down. He's in an offense that has one receiver and not the best pass protection. Obviously, his limits at his age were always going to hold him back, but it's easy to look at how things ended with Aaron Rodgers and just say he sucks and all that, but he did have some really good starts and did play a strong role in this Steelers team getting into the playoffs and kind of accomplished everything he could have hoped for in that final season in Pittsburgh. We'll see if he wants to retire he, like a Jacoby Brissett, could complete the legacy and go to Minnesota, and maybe the Vikings can do that. JJ McCarthy bench here, but we'll see where it goes with Aaron Rodgers. Ultimately, the lack of physical traits with him, I would call it now. If I were Aaron Rodgers, I would go out relatively on top. I think he helped his legacy by just kind of playing ball, getting his team to the playoffs. You obviously wish it would have ended a little better than it did in the playoffs, but I do think it's time. We'll see what happens. But then we have this cluster of fine starting quarterbacks in Tier 4 that I still don't fully know what they are yet. You have 3 rookie quarterbacks heading into year 2, and Daniel Jones is going to be at the top of this tier as well, because I think he does come with a bit of an uncertainty element to him. We'll talk about Daniel Jones. I think with how he played this year, he belongs at the top of this category. But trying to sort these rookie quarterbacks has become a very controversial topic out there, especially on Twitter. Giants fans, not a fan that I said I would put Dart behind Shuck and Cam Ward, and I'm going to stand by that here in the rankings here. But these guys, they're in this tier together for a reason, and I think each of these QBs give their respective teams a lot of reason for hope and optimism. And I'll start with Jackson Dart there. I mean, man, the high-end plays from him are more exciting even than what a Tyler Shuck can do, even though I will defend Tyler Shuck's ability to create and this narrative that he doesn't have upside. I think it's bullshit, but I do think Jackson Dart has more speed and slightly more arm talent, which again, Tyler Shuck is underrated there, but the ability to create and navigate pressure and just make these plays out of thin air. Like Jackson Dart did some really impressive stuff. What he's able to do in the design QB run game, as long as he can limit the hits that he does take, because I do think it's a real thing, not just the concussions, because Giants fans will always say, why are you so worried about injuries? He only had 1 concussion. They just kept bringing him to the medical tent. Well, look at Jaden Daniels this year. It was the same deal. It's not just concussions. It's, broken ankles and, taking hits and getting injured. I'm worried about that with Jackson Dart with his play style. He's got to learn how to slide, but you got some really high upside to work with there. It's just the pocket presence is all over the map. Sometimes he does some really good stuff. Sometimes it's like, why did you bail out of that clean pocket? Man, that was a perfectly clean pocket, and you just rolled into pressure and created nothing out of something in the reverse of that. Also, I think when it comes to making mistakes and putting the ball in harm's way, Dart was much more reckless with the football than both Shuck and Ward. So I am very curious to see what sort of development Dart can show. And at the very least, I do think you have someone that obviously should be starting, and you're encouraged to see where this can go. Then you have Tyler Shuck, who comes in, yes, older, 25 years old as a rookie. But look, as long as you're at 25 years old and you've shown that you've learned the position and you've gotten the proper development that you could only hope that Jackson Dart could show in so many of the more fine details of the position, there are aspects when it comes to poise in the pocket, going, playing on time, checking the ball down and not taking bad hits. There's so many aspects of the position that, yeah, if Jackson Dart can learn these things within the next couple of years by the time he's 25, that would be amazing. But as long as you're showing that development, I don't care if that happened in college or at the NFL level, that's great. And the fact that he's 26 does not bother me. He has an outstanding arm. He does create plays. I feel like so many people that are hard on Tyler Shuck didn't even watch the Saints, because all you hear is he's old and he's got a low upside. And it's like, well, what we talk about with upside with QBs is mobility and extending plays. And if you say Tyler Shuck doesn't do those things, you just ain't watching, man. There's no way around it. He clearly does those things. I actually think he has the best general pocket feel to know when and how to use his legs out of this entire rookie class. So there's a lot to like with Tyler Shuck, who only played half of the season. If he did play the full season, I might even make him the highest rated out of this rookie class. But I am going to stand by Cam Ward. I think the development he showed as the year went on, where it was ugly to start, but always had those incredible flashes. I mean, Cam Ward does have those Mahomesian moments, even above what a Jackson Dart can do, where he's making throws across his body and he's getting out of sacks, and he has that special ability to him. And I do love Cam Ward's pocket presence. I kind of regret, praising Tyler Shuck to the level that I did, because I think it's a serious strength in Cam Ward's game as well. Both those guys deserve a ton of praise in that element one way or another. But the fact that Cam Ward got through this rookie season in Tennessee with his head above water, almost 3,200 passing yards, 15 touchdowns, 7 picks. It's not like it was amazing or anything like that, but that's all I wanted to see from him, especially when you see Callahan get fired. It's not like Jackson Dart with the Giants, where the scheme stayed the same. The offensive coordinator was still in place there. It was a complete reversal from everything they had tried to build over the offseason with Tennessee, and you could see it watching the Titans. Like, forget about the fact that his O-line was bad and his receivers were bad. That's also true, but what hurt Cam Ward even more was the clear lack of being on the same page with these receivers and having any semblance of this team knowing what they wanted to do. Cam Ward was playing in the middle of a hurricane. Fitting, because he finished his year as a hurricane. But bad puns aside, he played in the middle of a hurricane this year and came out a little scathed, but on top. Like, he came out looking like someone that, coaches are going to want to come here. Saleh and hopefully Brian Daboll, who loved Cam Ward in the pre-draft process, can come in here and really get this thing going. So I'm encouraged by all three of these rookie QBs. I understand the arguments for any of them above the other, and at the end of the day, it just doesn't matter, because we're going to see so much more from these guys and more information to be able to properly rank where these guys should land. And then I've got Daniel Jones in this category as well. Obviously not a rookie, but a lot of unknowns with him. Number one is, how healthy is he coming back from the Achilles injury? And number two, what version of last year's Daniel Jones do we get? The first half of Daniel Jones was a high-end starting quarterback. He was really balling for the Colts, and not just like easy schemed up stuff either. Like, he was pushing the ball downfield. He was creating out of structure. This is a different version of Daniel Jones that we've ever seen. And then they trade for Sauce Gardner. Expectations get risen substantially. And even before the Achilles injury, you started to see those old, nightmarish versions of Daniel Jones, where he's getting sacked with no pocket presence. And, I used to have a joke on Daniel Jones when he was with the Giants of, this week's Daniel Jones fumble brought to you by insert defender. Like, it was real. Like, he would fumble every single week. You started to see that there. You started to see some of the mistakes as a passer. So what version of him do you get? How healthy is he? I really like what we saw. He's just a tough guy to rank. But now we get to my tier 3 of quarterbacks. These are good starters. And again, guys that I think if you put a great situation around these guys in this tier, are quarterbacks that you can win a Super Bowl with. Now, I still like that definition for all of the QBs here in tier 3, but more so than ever, I feel a divide, a top shelf and a bottom shelf. A top shelf of your 15-year aged whiskeys that you gotta treat with a little more respect than, maybe your baseline Jameson or whatever it might be. But so for me, tier 3B, which are the good quarterbacks, and QBs 16 through 21. And this is where you can certainly count on these guys being actually ranked in the order that I show them, and this is where I'm going to start revealing them one by one. So QB 21 for me is CJ Stroud. What a fall from grace. And I pray that we get to midseason next year and you guys are able to screenshot this and throw it back in my face and be like, you effing moron, how did you have CJ Stroud that low when he showed what he did in his rookie season? I get it. I have defended CJ Stroud for a long time here, but you cannot deny the lack of progress and not so much just that, but the complete regression that he has shown. It's very scary to see a guy that is playing with the lack of confidence that he has, that is not seeing the field, that his accuracy has regressed. His footwork in the pocket is broken. This guy has no semblance of pocket presence at all. He's fumbling the ball left and right. He's pushing the ball into harm's way. It's a disaster right now with CJ Stroud. And if we're ranking where these guys are at right now, I still think putting CJ Stroud in this category of a tier 3 quarterback is still a lot of respect for what he has done at points. And I will even defend, like, in Arrowhead in 2024 in the divisional round, I thought he played a good game. But, man, the bad has been so evident. You can make a strong case that Davis Mills outplayed him in the same offense. At first, it was like the offensive line is just such a nightmare that you can excuse CJ Stroud. But in the second half of the year, the Texans' offensive line at least got to a level of competency that doesn't explain the lows that CJ Stroud was playing at. And then through the playoffs, he had 10 turnovers in 2 playoff games. And this Texans team very well beats the Patriots and could be heading to the Super Bowl if they just got the Andy Dalton line of quarterbacks. And right now, even if we're ranking him maybe around that spot, he didn't even play at that in the playoffs when they needed him. So really a fall from grace for CJ Stroud. And I actually have him ranked now below the big debate from that draft class with Bryce Young at QB 20. Bryce Young is going in the opposite direction and has now for the last 2 years. And Bryce Young did get to the playoffs against a very good Rams pass defense and balled the hell out. If you have not gone back and watched Bryce Young against the Rams, you're doing yourself a disservice, man. I mean, they get down 14-0, not for really any fault of Bryce Young. I mean, there was, yes, a 4th down where there was nothing there, and, you know, he had to force a contested catch, so he had an incompletion on 4th down, but they get down 14-0 quickly, and in every single moment in that game, they get a 3rd down. They get a big drive, a chance to get back in this game or get blown out, and Bryce Young throwing deep digs on 3rd downs, creating plays with his legs. But it's not just that game against the Rams, where I thought he was exceptional. Bryce, throughout the course of this season, whether it was the start in Atlanta where he breaks the Panthers' single-game passing record, or the countless game-winning drive opportunities that he is so good in these moments. And he got another one against the Rams, put the ball right where he needed to in the playoffs, and his rookie wide receiver, Jimmy Horn, just dropped it, by the way. But there's a clutch factor, and there are games where Bryce Young balls out enough for me to say, I think he's a good quarterback. I think he is in the top 20 or so, and if they could really put a perfect dream situation around Bryce Young with how clutch he is and the highs he's shown, I think you could maybe go on a run, right? Now, he's at the bottom of this category. There's still a lot of inconsistency there. There are games where it just doesn't feel like he's able to find the right answers or make the big throw or get out of a sack and, you know, have these incredible plays as well. So I'm not here to say he's like all the way arrived and he's perfect. You know, he's the 20th ranked QB in the league for me. But you certainly have created this interesting discourse now when it was such a heavy debate between Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. And look, after the first year, I thought it would have been nuts, really, at any point for Bryce Young to be ranked above CJ Stroud after that. But at this point, I think it really has come back in this direction, and it's going to be fascinating to see how things play out. And then I think it's fitting to have Baker Mayfield here next, who's another, you know, number 1 pick. Obviously, Bryce 1, CJ Stroud 2 in their draft class. Baker feels kind of like his career trajectory. Obviously, he's changed teams a couple times, but that roller coaster of a, you know, highly drafted quarterback where the highs are really good and the lows are really bad. And man, Baker Mayfield single-handedly cost the Bucs their playoff spot this year. Now, he had them, 7-1 to begin with because he was an MVP candidate. There was not a more polarizing quarterback this year in terms of first half versus second half. So we shall see changing offensive coordinator, maybe a more consistent season in terms of having his O-line healthy, having his receivers healthy. The infrastructure there is very good, but too many overthrows, too many bad mistakes, too many questionable sacks and moments with his pocket presence. He has fallen here since we did this at the wrong time, right? We did this, I think, right when the Bucs were 7-1, and I made Baker Mayfield a tier 2 quarterback because of the level he was playing at that time. Call it prisoner of the moment or just reacting to new information, but he has really fallen here into the low teens for me. And then I have Jalen Hurts. I think a lot of people fascinated where I would rank Jalen Hurts here. The thing is, this is pretty close to where I've had Jalen Hurts. I think some other guys have passed him up, and I do think Jalen Hurts played largely bad this season relative to how he's played in the previous couple of years. I still think Jalen Hurts, obviously, as we saw last year, can be a good quarterback on a great team that can give you a certain way to win a Super Bowl. And that's what we saw last year, where he was able to play within himself, focus on what he does well, which is pushing the ball to the boundary with accuracy to incredible playmakers, trying to extend plays on third down, and limiting turnovers when you're, playing with a lead. Just, if it's not there in third down, roll out, frustratingly so at times from a clean pocket, a lot of times, but throw the ball away. And in the case of last year, trust your all-decade level defense that they had last year, and that when you get the ball back, you'll either get a big play from your great playmakers or that run game will spring something loose. This year, it wasn't a bad surrounding cast, but it certainly wasn't a super team, right? The offensive line took a step back. Saquon wasn't the same. A.J. Brown sure as hell was not the same. He had some frustrating moments. He made Jalen Hurts have to deal with the types of frustrations that most quarterbacks have to deal with at points. And then you get left with Jalen Hurts in a lot more close game scenarios where he has to beat teams with his arm. And you just see the deficiencies in Jalen Hurts in those moments, whether it's the ball's in his hand against a shaky Niners defense at the end of the game. He gets down into the red zone and he bails out of a clean pocket twice, forces a ball into triple coverage, and just kind of throws a trust throw in the middle of the field to Devonta Smith and says, it's not a great ball or a great read, but go make a play, Devonta Smith. I mean, that's the type of stuff that Jalen Hurts is suspect to. And you also see in different moments, whether it's the Chargers game or different moments in the season where, when he has to beat you with his arm and can't just throw the ball away on third down, he will avoid the middle of the field at times. That's where it's frustrating with Jalen Hurts, because you do see at times he makes beautiful throws to the middle of the field. And then there's other times you watch the tape and it's like, dude, the crosser's wide open, and you just looked at it and decided not to throw it, or he'll push the ball into harm's way as well. So when you need Jalen Hurts in the drop back passing game, there's a lot of frustrations, but he does have these very defined strengths as well in the right situation. Being involved as a design runner, pushing the ball with accuracy to the perimeter, where he is one of the more accurate vertical throwers in the league. I will give him credit for that. But I certainly think with the surrounding cast taking a drop this year, we've seen a drop in Jalen Hurts' play, and he's going to fall in these rankings a little bit. Right now here, I have him QB 18. I think I had him 15 heading into the year, so pretty damn close. It's just, I think a lot of Eagles fans and Jalen Hurts defenders have really been forced to acknowledge just how amazing the situation was last year that led to them winning a Super Bowl. And again, a tier 3 QB with a great team can win a Super Bowl. So that's where I still have him here. But I do have Kyler Murray here. This is the take that I have had so many of you guys, and I respect your opinion as a viewer. So many people have said it's time to jump ship. Like, stop defending Kyler Murray. Like he's maybe a tier 4 guy, or he's just not it. And I just can't quite quit Kyler Murray. I'm sorry. Not that I'm going to defend him as a great QB or anything like that, but I still think he belongs in this category, and I think he has been completely thrown under the bus by the Arizona Cardinals. Number one, by not putting him in the right system. If he got to play in so many of these other systems, like maybe Jalen Hurts or even like Bo Nix in Denver, there are certain systems that run a lot more shotgun and spread-style passing concepts that Kyler Murray, I think, could play much better in than kind of forcing him to be in this Shanahan-style system where he's got to turn his back to the defense and get kind of trapped in these giant 9-man protections and attack the middle of the field on crossing routes. There's amazing aspects to those systems, and I understand why the Cardinals want to operate in that, right? The Shanahan offense is run by 2/3 of the teams in the league for a reason, but that's the opposite of putting your quarterback in a position to succeed. I also just don't think he was that bad this year either. Obviously, there are moments where he has his pass ups. There's those crossing routes that you want him to hit and he just doesn't quite see it or trust it. But he does have a great ability to throw the ball down the field. He does have exceptional pocket presence and brilliant play extension ability. If you could lean into him as a designed runner more consistently, he was the most efficient per yards per attempt designed running quarterback just in 2024. And I think you watch the 4.5 starts or 5 starts, whatever it was, of this season, and it is crazy the amount of plays that his wide receivers were not making for Kyler Murray, whether it is Marvin Wilson, who was insane from the second he got hurt, or Marvin Harrison just not making some of those big catches for him. So I still think Kyler Murray can be a good starting quarterback in this league, whether it's with the Cardinals or not. What I do want to see is him with the right scheme, with the right coach. Stop trying to square peg, round hole his skill set. And similar to what the Eagles are able to do with Jalen Hurts, build around his strengths. And I know there's going to be some Eagles fans that see that, and I have Kyler Murray over Jalen Hurts. I firmly believe, and this is what I'm doing at the end of the day, if you flip those two guys' positions and Kyler Murray was on the Eagles last year and Jalen Hurts is in Arizona, I do think the Eagles win the Super Bowl with Kyler Murray. I think Kyler plays very well. Jalen Hurts, I'm not sure is a starter in the league in 2026 if he was in Arizona the last 2 years. And maybe that makes me a hater. Maybe it makes me an idiot, but that is my honest opinion. And then I do have Bo Nix in this tier as well. Bo Nix keeps climbing up for me. You forget with Bo Nix because he played so much in college and kind of in many ways operates like a veteran. The ball comes out quick. He kind of has that veteran point guard feel to him at times. You kind of forget that he's only in year 2 and getting better at this. His ability in the fourth quarter of games this year and some of the big throws he makes down the field are certainly impressive. And it's just so devastating that he got hurt because he had the big moment, right? And he executed. Balls in his hands. It was everything you could have hoped for. As a Broncos fan, as a Bo Nix fan, okay, here's Bo's opportunity to show that he belongs. He's a quarterback that this team can win a Super Bowl with. You've got 4 minutes to go take the lead, and he made multiple big throws, including a beautiful touch pass to the corner of the end zone on a fade. Then the game goes to overtime, and you all saw what happened. But Bo Nix did execute for this team, and I believe I had him at the top of tier 4 the last time we did this, so he's climbing up. Just so devastating that he's not going to be able to finish this thing off. But I do believe QB 16 is the highest I've had Bo Nix at this point. But now, still again in tier 3, but this is where that next top shelf of talents come in within this tier, and that's where I have Caleb Williams up next. And I think a lot of people fresh off of the playoff heroics are going to be like, what are you talking about? Caleb is incredible and a top 10 quarterback. I think some people might be making a case for Caleb at this point. Look, this dude's traits are generational. I've said that in the past. And they've been maybe even better than he could have hoped for. His ability to get out of sacks, the arm talent to make these throws on the run, the clutch factor late in these games. The high-end ability of Caleb Williams is already potentially the best in the NFL. As Mahomes gets older, Josh Allen is Josh Allen, of course, but there's an argument that any given play, Caleb Williams can make the most highest difficulty, most batshit crazy, incredible throws that you'll ever see. I mean, he made 2 in these playoffs that are genuinely some of the best throws I've seen in the last decade. And I don't put that lightly. The 4th and 8 against the Packers and the touchdown against the Rams to force overtime. Now, I don't think he's fully there yet, and that's what's scary for the rest of the league. The down-to-down stuff for him is just not fully there yet. Sometimes there's overthrows over the middle of the field or on corner routes. Sometimes he's not quite seeing it on time. He can hold the ball a little bit too long. A lot of the underlying peripheral stuff on Caleb Williams is still getting there, and that's fine. He's at the end of year 2. I now have him as a top 15 QB and a tier 3 guy, but the fact that if if, like I said, the down-to-down stuff, the consistency, the peripherals can improve with him on top of or below to raise the floor of the incredible stuff he can do, Caleb could be an MVP and an elite quarterback as soon as that stuff clicks into form. I just don't think he's quite there yet, and I think that's perfectly fair. Then I do have Jared Goff here. I don't want to spend a ton of time on Jared Goff. We know who he is, and we saw this year, especially in true drop-back pass situations, the interior pass protection wasn't as good, and we saw some more ugly moments from Jared Goff. He's one of the better processors of defenses in the league. He has some of the best accuracy in the league. He can even be underrated at times at the ability to kind of slide in the pocket and make some big throws. I think Jared Goff is a very good quarterback, and I'm going to move on. Then we have Sam Darnold. So that's going to be QB 13 for Sam Darnold. And it's been good to see a full season of this, because when we did this around midseason, it was like, man, what do we do with Sam Darnold? Because he was playing for the first third of the year like one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And then in the last 2/3, yes, the Seahawks kept winning, but the tape is the tape. And Sam Darnold was putting the ball in harm's way much closer to some of the issues we've had on Sam Darnold at times. So he can be inconsistent at times. He can be frustrating at times with some of the turnovers. But that doesn't mean I'm not super impressed by a lot of the other stuff that he just does so well. I mean, his ability to hang in the pocket and make incredible throws down the field, some of the play extension he does make. There's so much talent in there with him, and the mental side of things. While there's some frustrating moments at times, there's a lot more good in there than bad. And he's been perfect for what Seattle could have expected from him. And obviously, they're here in the NFC Championship. He played great against the Niners, and we'll see just how far he can go. And man, I would love it if he can fully shake the idea that he's a turnover waiting to happen and he's a Super Bowl winning quarterback. I mean, I've always been a big fan of Sam Darnold until this most recent offseason, when I kind of questioned Seattle going with him, and I was wrong. I was dead wrong, and he's right around the top 10 quarterback range here now. I do have Brock Purdy next. Probably going to be an interesting debate with NFC West fans watching this. Man, Purdy came back from that injury when a lot of people were saying the contract was a mistake. This is Tua all over again. Look at how well Mac Jones is playing there. And yes, Brock Purdy does have Kyle Shanahan, but he is so underrated, Brock Purdy, because he does all of the things that a Mac Jones can do, playing in structure in a Kyle Shanahan offense, attacking the middle of the field, all of that system quarterback stuff. But Brock Purdy continually does not get enough credit for how incredible he is as a play extender. I mean, look at this dude's lower half. He is, my apologies, he is thick. Like, he gets out of sacks. He has contact balance. He has excellent acceleration. Even if the top speed caps out, like, he gets out of the pocket. There's a little bit of that, like, peak Russell Wilson with his ability. So he'll play on time when it's necessary, but he brings that next level to this Niners offense that someone like Mac Jones just isn't going to do. And the fact that this team went into Philly and won in a day that, yeah, Brock Purdy did throw a couple picks, and he will do that. He will put the ball in harm's way at times. But he can make up for it with incredible plays, third and longs that you think are dead drives anyway, and he makes something out of it. It's really freaking impressive, on top of just being a really smart structure on-time thrower as well. So for me, Brock Purdy deserves this respect here. And then our next two quarterbacks here at the top of this list, I think are really threatening to be tier 2 quarterbacks next year. And it's going to be Trevor Lawrence first, and then we'll talk about Jordan Love after that. Trevor Lawrence, what he did in the last third of this season was the prince that was promised, right? All the traits, the number one prospect, QB pick, all that. And then the last 2 years, it's just been so inconsistent. And for the first third of this year, first half of this year even, it was inconsistent. It was what has held Trevor back for all these years, especially the last 2 years. But first year in Liam Cohen's offense, they go get Jacoby Myers. He settled the hell in. And if we were to do this before that final playoff game, I just might have Trevor Lawrence as a tier 2 quarterback and say he's made it to that point. Once upon a time, by the way, I did have that early on in his career where he played his best football, and it's just been more of a roller coaster with Trevor Lawrence. Unfortunately, in the playoff game, we saw some of those inconsistent frustrations pop up. Really bad pick in there in the first half. Very costly moment there. And then something with Trevor Lawrence that I really battle with is he seems to have more miscommunications and almost completions than any quarterback in the league, where he makes a lot of throws that are either very high difficulty catches for his receivers, or he's putting it in a spot hoping that his receiver sees it the same way, and it just maybe isn't super realistic that that's going to be the case. And we saw multiple of those in the playoffs. Now, one of them on a third down was clearly on Christian Kirk. But I think that captures what I need to see from Trevor Lawrence next year to then put him in that tier 2 of quarterbacks. Because again, I think he's close. He deserves a ton of respect for the run that this team went on, how close they got. And it's not like he didn't do anything against the Bills in that playoff loss. But if you can get that consistency from him that he showed from like week 12 onward, we're going to be there with Trevor Lawrence. And then Jordan Love. So impressed by what Jordan Love did this season, specifically in one area that I've always said has held Love back, and that is accuracy. I've consistently defended that this guy is not what a lot of people think he is, as this like Jameis Winston-esque turnover machine. The stats just very much don't support that. He's consistently in kind of the top third of turnover-worthy play percentage. I do think what I've said is his turnovers tend to be a little bit more ugly than a lot of people, because he really is a risk taker in the sense of he'll see a zone window and he'll make throws off his back foot, and he'll make these throws that he thinks he sees something. And I would say at a 4-1, 5-1 clip, he's right about those throws. And it's a good part of his game that makes him how good he is. But you do see when he does make mistakes, it tends to be, you watch it back on the tape and you're like, yeah, Jordan should not have tried that one, right? And it gets thrown around and it's like, yeah, that was a horrible interception, no doubt. But the overall, interceptions, turnover-worthy play percentage does not support that. He threw 6 interceptions this year. His turnover-worthy play percentage was 9th best out of 43 QBs. And I think most people are realizing that he's just not this Jameis Winston type of decision maker. In fact, he sees the game really at a high level. But going back to my first point, what I've always thought has held Jordan Love back is accuracy, throwing off his back foot, maybe not, the complete command of the football, but for a long time, when he would let an out route go on 3rd and 8, or he would throw an open crosser, in a big spot, you kind of held your breath for a long time that Jordan Love was going to hit it. And I think he really came into his own this year, and perhaps, it was the first year where it was his first year as a starter, and then last year he's playing on that bad knee that we thought was a season-ending knee injury in week 1. Perhaps he does just have a better base to throw from, or he's just more comfortable and it's something he's worked on. But I think the development in his accuracy is a huge, huge deal. And by the end of the season, most accuracy metrics you look at, Jordan Love in like catchable throw percentage and all that stuff, he was at the very top of the league. Just like Trevor Lawrence, though, I want to see next year that old issue of his is fully gone before I say he's a tier 2 QB. But I tweeted this a little while ago that, yes, the Packers had this frustrating end of the season, but a big reason I would not have fired LaFleur is that Jordan Love is cooking right now and playing at the absolute peak of his powers, and he feels like a tier 2 QB right now. I don't want to rock the boat with that. And you head into next year, I think, with the utmost confidence that this is a quarterback that the Packers can win the Super Bowl, maybe not just with, but in large part because he balled out in that game against Chicago, and a lot of other circumstances went wrong for a very injured team that left 10 points on the board with special teams to lose that game in Chicago. But that will conclude tier 3 for me. And now we can go to tier 2. So we're now into the top 9 quarterbacks, and I'm going to keep Dak Prescott here. This is kind of where I've had Dak for a while now. I think the Cowboys have been a bit of a mess, but when you watch Dak Prescott, he's a tier 2 QB, man. I think he is, behind Joe Burrow, the best processor and decision maker on an efficiency basis in the league. The accuracy is exceptional. He can make plays out of structure. That's probably what has always held him back, I think, from being an elite guy, is he's just not this incredible out of structure guy. But I have really grown an appreciation for Dak Prescott's game, and once upon a time, I would have said he was overrated. I think I am now higher on Dak Prescott than a lot of people, and think we could get a pretty damn special season from Dak next year if Dallas has a good offseason. Big if, but we'll see. And then at number 8, this is almost a placeholder ranking. Jaden Daniels. Really a tough one, man, because I think 2025 was just such a wasted season. What is interesting here is when he did play, it's hard to know what to do with it, because Terry McLaurin was hurt for a lot of it, and that's his guy in terms of vertical passing game. But there were some really bad games in there from Jaden Daniels to start the season. There were, I think it was the Chargers game. He was exceptional. And then he just missed more than 2/3 of the season, right? And then he tried to come back, and it was like, why are you coming back? He had that elbow injury. It was just a wasted season for Daniels. But you see what happened with CJ Stroud, even go back to Baker Mayfield, his second year. You know, there's a world where Jaden is, you know, having that slump after what was just an incredible rookie season. Now, I'm willing to go back in time in my mind and remember just how special Jaden Daniels was as a rookie. This dude was unconscious. Teams could not figure out how to stop him. His decision making, his pocket presence, the annoying scrambles, but finding guys on the run as well. I mean, there was so much there in Jaden Daniels. He was so much better than I ever expected out the gate. Again, kind of a placeholder ranking here. I felt very confident with him as a tier 2 quarterback after that rookie season, and year 2 was just such a disaster that I'm not willing to take him out of this yet, but I would understand if you didn't have him this high either because of what happened this year. But then as our number 7 quarterback here, I have Justin Herbert. Very frustrated with Justin at this point because what he did this year in the regular season was as good as I've ever felt about Justin Herbert. I thought the comfort within this offense and, the ability to extend plays when they needed it from him. I thought he was pushing towards being that tier 1 elite quarterback. But we did see a little bit more ups and downs with the pass protection being as bad as it was at points in this season. But I think where I'm most frustrated with Justin Herbert is what everybody says about him has really become true. Like, I genuinely think he gets to the playoffs and melts. This has not been the same Justin Herbert in the playoffs that I've watched in the regular season. And the crazy thing is, against the Patriots, in what was just an egregious outing for Justin Herbert, where there were receivers open, he just didn't see them. He was overthrowing guys left and right. But people watched the last 10 minutes of that game where he did get the shit beat out of him. Like, the offensive line eventually broke in that game, and your lasting memory is Justin Herbert taking all these hits. The film does not tell you in that game that his offensive line was horrible. I'm not saying it was great, but he had opportunity after opportunity. He had clean pockets that he bailed out of. He had out of structure opportunities to make throws, as we've seen Herbert do time and time again. And this is now a thing. The if man, Justin Herbert, I think it's justified, man. I do. The biggest Justin Herbert defender has to admit that he just has not played well enough in the playoffs to be considered anything more than a tier 2 QB. When he's on, the dude is special. And I still think QB 7 is a respectable ranking for Herbert. And I'm excited to see him work with Mike McDaniel and get his tackles back. But until this dude actually wins a playoff game and plays well in a playoff game, I can't go much higher than this, man. I can't. And the guy that he lost to is going to be my QB6, Drake May. I see a lot of similarities in these guys' games, honestly, like the arm, the ability to run an NFL offense, make ridiculous throws down the field. The out of structure ability is comparable. I think Drake May is even twitchier athlete and more explosive version of Justin Herbert. But we've also seen when pushes come to shove, in very challenging moments, Drake May has stepped up already in his year 2 as in the playoffs. And I do think when we get into this echelon of rankings, that matters. So I'm giving Drake May the nod over Justin Herbert. And it's not that Drake May's been perfect in these playoffs, right? He's had a lot of fumbles. Got to clean up the fumbles, Drake. Like, he's trying to do too much at times, holding the ball when he shouldn't, not sensing pressure at times. Not all of them are on his fault, are all his fault. But, it's not that Drake May's been perfect. But man, he has made plenty of big throws in big moments, was rightfully in the MVP conversation, might even win it. We'll see. The strides and development that May has made here in year 2 is outstanding and should be terrifying for the rest of the league. And obviously, he's in year 2. He's still getting better. Like, would I be surprised if we visit this next year and Drake May takes another step, or he goes and wins the Super Bowl here and plays great through it, and before long, we're calling him a true tier 1 elite quarterback? I would not be surprised. I don't think we're quite there yet with May, though. And then Matthew Stafford, also in this tier 2. Another incredible year from Stafford, if not an even better year. We'll see if he takes home the MVP. The reality with Stafford is there have been, especially in the last third of this year, like if you were going to make a case for Stafford as a tier 1 elite quarterback, he's been putting the ball in harm's way a little bit too much for my liking there. I still think you look at the elite quarterbacks and what they're all able to do from a mobility standpoint. It just is harder for Stafford to get into that category when he doesn't add as much, in have to have it third downs or in the red zone. Like, he's got some of those physical limitations to create. If he was a damn near flawless decision maker, I would say, sure, like Tom Brady once upon a time was up in this category, but Stafford does put the ball in harm's way a little bit more than someone like a Brady in his prime, for example. So I do have him at the top of tier 2 here, but obviously with a great team around him, Matthew Stafford is elevating that unit and putting themselves in a position to maybe win the Super Bowl this year. And then tier 1, despite all the change in this video, this list really has not changed for me. I have the same 4. Like I said, haven't seen a QB really make a case to get up into this category, but what I will say is there are a couple of QBs here that are making a case to maybe fall out of it. Lamar just was not good this year. He's going to be my QB4. I still believe in Lamar. I think it was a tough year in Baltimore for a lot of people, but he's kind of on alert next year that, like, I got to see what we saw the last couple of years to keep you here in this tier, because some of the accuracy, the decision-making, some of the mobility, nothing was at the same level with Lamar than what we've seen at the last 2 years when I have comfortably put him in this big 4 category. Patrick Mahomes as well. Man, excited to see him reunited with Eric Bieniemy. We'll see if that provides some schematic changes to the offense, but dude, I can't call Patrick Mahomes the best quarterback in the NFL anymore. I can't. I think he's in the GOAT conversation. What he did to win those Super Bowls, unbelievable. All of it. But the deep accuracy, not good enough. Turnover worthy play percentage was as high as it's been since his second year. To get mathy about it, I mean, just 22 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, PFF passing grade as low as it's been in his entire career. By a good mark, just a 70.7 passing grade. I mean, we got to see that old Mahomes back. And by the way, he'll be 31 next year, coming off a pretty gruesome knee injury. So if, there's some questions and some similarities to like what happened with Russell Wilson for example, where so much of what he does so well might not necessarily be there. There's going to have to be a continued evolution in Patrick Mahomes' game. Obviously, I still have him as an elite quarterback in the Big Four. If we're sitting here next year and Patrick Mahomes bounces back from this thing and he's the best QB in the league and he wins MVP and the Chiefs are back in the Super Bowl picture, nobody's going to be surprised. But we're at kind of a fork in the roads moment right now where I do think there's a reality where this is as high as it gets for Mahomes. But I'm not going to bet on that either. Certainly not with this guy. But, man, watching Joe Burrow play this year, I'm pretty comfortably putting Joe Burrow ahead of Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. Maybe this shifts, of course, but I just don't know how you can watch the tape from this year and, frankly, going back with Mahomes, especially to 2024, Joe Burrow's been the better quarterback than Patrick Mahomes the last 2 years. He just hasn't had the defensive support to get the win totals. But, dude, processing, deep ball accuracy, play extension, ability to throw with anticipation, I still think Joe Burrow is right at the peak of NFL quarterbacks in today's game. It just doesn't honestly always get recognized for it. And then Josh Allen, kind of by default, number one here. Josh Allen himself didn't have the best year. Better than Mahomes and Lamar, certainly, and obviously Joe Burrow was hurt, so the best of these Big Four QBs, and I think Allen, of all these guys, has Lamar and Mahomes regressing this year and Burrow's injury concerns. Allen is most firmly here in this tier one. There's still some frustrations, and I will call out, like, the way I look at this is, and I'm going to get roasted by Broncos fans for this, I do think it was a catch by Brandon Cooks. There's like a 50-50 split on this. I can see an argument for both ways. I just think it came down to the judgment of the officials. If they called it a catch, it would have stood as a catch. If they called it an interception, it obviously stood as an interception. I think Josh Allen got very unfortunate by the judgment of the officials for a second year in a row, where last year ended on the tush push, or the QB sneak. I also think they win if Josh Allen doesn't make a bunch of really bad mistakes in this game. He overthrows, was it Kincaid for what would have been a game-winning touchdown? He has the fumble before half. He had the pick right after the Broncos gave them the ball. Like, if any number of those mistakes don't happen and Allen, also makes the awesome plays he made to keep the Bills in this game, which is relevant, they are playing in the AFC Championship this weekend. So it's kind of like, he played well enough to win, in my opinion, because of all the incredible stuff he can do. On that drive before they called it an interception, he converts a 3rd and 6 that was like everything that makes Josh Allen so special in terms of pocket presence and extending the play and finding those high percentage looks downfield. It just didn't end the way he obviously could have hoped for. But I do have Josh Allen as QB1 right now, and it's, unless you're just going off of this last season and putting like maybe Drake May or Matthew Stafford there, I'm taking in the whole body of work. I don't know who else you really put at QB1 right now with a similar process where we're looking at the whole body of work, not just 2025. So there you go. There's your updated QB tier maker list. That should be enough QB analysis to get us to next year. Obviously, we will visit these guys in my deep dive series over the summer as well. But we are really approaching draft season here. In fact, this is the last video on this channel before I leave for the Shrine Bowl and for Senior Bowl. So next week, I will have some live shows down there in Mobile reacting to some of the risers and fallers at the Senior Bowl. For the patrons out there, you guys can keep looking out for my Studs and Duds series over on Patreon. YouTube members here also get access to that. Studs and Duds is now a part of my exclusive content package. But it is time to get out of here. Please do let me know in the comments down below what you think of my QB rankings. Please do hit the like button on the way out. Really helps me out. And until next time, cheers.